Hey everybody, so moving right along, here we are in my image gallery. I've got my images. This is actually pulling my images from Firebase, which I have uploaded. So that's what we're going to do in this video is we're going to configure Firebase storage to take images, and then we'll configure our app to both send those images up right here instead of, or perhaps in addition to adding to gallery, we will upload those files and then set up an event listener on our Firebase to notify us when there's new stuff there, when there's changes. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to use both storage and we're going to use Firestore. So I think it'll be kind of neat. And so you can see here, I've got this collection called images in my Firestore. This messages one is from, initially I was thinking of making a messages Firestore Firebase video, but I realized images would be more fun, even if it is a little bit harder. And so each one of these images, each one of these items in this image collection is a URL that leads to Firebase storage. And in my Firebase storage, I've got a bunch of images. Only 4 of those have correct links here in my Firestore collection. And so those 4 images are the ones that are showing up in my gallery. So we'll see how all that works here in a sec. A couple of things I want to point out in the way of getting started. So first of all, you'll want to go to console.firebase.google.com and either make a new project as I showed you in that previous video, or go to your project and in settings, you can get your Firebase config. You will also need to have in your index.html, you'll need to have a link to your app.js file. And these links here, which should come in your setup to Firebase-app, Firebase-Firestore, and Firebase-storage. So those are the Google services we're going to use. And then one last thing, in your Firebase storage, navigate to rules and change the rule. There should be a rule there right now that says allow read and write if there's a registered user making the request, which is a good idea. And maybe in some future video, I'll show you how to set up registered users. It's not that hard to use something called OAuth to, for instance, have people log in with their Google account or their GitHub account or whatever. But for now, we're just going to put this default rule in here that says, as long as this request is happening before December 19th, 2020, then just let them do whatever the heck they want. And theoretically, we could have some problems with hackers or whatever. So I wouldn't leave this open for too long. You may want to just, while you're testing it, keep that open and then later on comment that out and put this one back. But I don't think it's going to be a big problem, and it's going to make our lives a lot easier for right now. So we're going to do that. And similarly, in your Firestore, you'll need to configure your rules with that same line. Allow read and write if the request is happening before some arbitrary date. And that's pretty much it. As long as you have those, you should be able to access your Firebase without being logged into any kind of an app. And you can see there's a tab for authentication. As I said, maybe in some future video, we'll explore authentication. But for now, we're going to just handle this image upload. So we're going to be loading stuff up into storage to start with. And I'm going to go back to my app.js. I've got my Firebase config here. It's got my API key, my database URL, and also my storage bucket, along with some other stuff. So all that stuff is associated with my account. You'll need your own data in here so that you're not using mine. Now, the first thing we're going to do is initialize our app. So I'm going to say Firebase dot initialize app, and I'm going to pass in my Firebase config file or object. And so, wait, that's not right. This should be Firebase dot initialize app. And that Firebase is going to come from the from here. So we get Firebase from here, from Firebase app, and then we use that function, Firebase.initialize app, and we pass in our Firebase config, and it contacts the server and sort of sets us up, and lets us know where we need to be. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say const storage equals Firebase.storage. And so now that's going to be a reference to my this tab over here, basically this storage container. And then the next thing I'm going to do is later on we'll come back and configure our Firestore database, but right now I can just think about how I'm going to add my file that I get back here up to my Firebase storage. And so when we drag and drop a file in, after we load here in the event listener, I'm going to, first of all, I think I need to make some metadata. And this metadata is just going to be content type here. And that's gonna specify what type of content that is. So it could be, you can see it's maybe a GIF there. I'm not sure why that is a GIF and not a JPEG, but so it is. And it's just gonna get that data from the file itself. So it can be included in my Firebase storage. And so what we'll do is we'll set this metadata to a new object, and this new object I'm going to give a content type key, and I'm just going to pass in file.type, and so it'll get that directly off this file when it's dragged in. And then I think I'm going to make a helper function right here. I'm going to say I think I'll just say upload file. And I'm going to pass in the file and the metadata. And so now our reader loads. After our reader's done loading, we'll call this function upload file. And this function upload file is what's going to use this storage reference. So down here below at gallery, I'm going to make a function called, you guessed it, upload file. And it's going to take in a file and metadata. And with that information, I'm going to make first a file path, so that we've got a different file path for each file, and I'm gonna do that by making kind of like a somewhat unique ID, and I could definitely get better with this, but this should be a fairly unique identifier. The way I'm about to do this. So what I'm going to do is say unique ID equals, and I'm going to use a library that's built into the window called get random values. And we'll pass in the type of random value we want to get, which is a fairly long array of numbers. And we're going to get back a random value. And we can see here, we go console.log. Oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to test this out because, again, I can't drag and drop on this particular browser. But this is going to give us a random identifier. And we can see that random identifier. It'll look something like this number here. Right here, 105. So it'll be a long numerical number that's going to be our new image name. And so what we're going to do is use that unique ID to generate a new path name. And what I'll say is const file path equals, and this is the file path we're going to send up to Firestore or Firebase storage. It gets so confusing sometimes. And so this is going to be unique ID. And then .jpg. And so this is our new, this is the name of each file will be images, and then unique ID. We'll have a unique ID and we'll JPEG it. And now I'm going to say const upload equals storage.ref.child. Bear with me, I'll explain this in a second. I'll pass in that new file path, and then I'll say .put. So storage was this value up here we created, which refers to Firebase storage. So we're saying at that storage ref, put a child with this with the name of this file path here, and that's so each one of these is a child of that storage ref, and then at that place, what I want to put is I want to put the file and the metadata. And now, so I'm going to put those things. And what we're going to get back from that is a very important thing and concept in JavaScript that you may or may not remember from about a month ago when I was talking about loading files. And that concept is called a promise. And maybe I'll make another video exploring promises in more detail. But know that when we get a promise, we can invoke .then. And so that promise that gets returned from this function, when it's done doing this task, we can say .then, and we'll get back a thing called a snapshot. And with this snapshot, we can do various stuff. And what I want to do with it is, first of all, let's log it out. No, wait. First of all, let's say snapshot.ref. So we're going to grab some properties. You can log it out here. You can console.log this snapshot. You'll see it's a fairly big data object, but let's just dial it down a little bit. And all this stuff about what to do with snapshots and how to work with them is in the API for working with Firebase. It's a little bit complicated to work through, but I'm happy to help you figure out how to do things that I'm not doing here if you want to do other things. And this snapshot's going to have a method on it called getDownloadURL. So we're going to get that download URL. So this will be when we load up this file, we can get the download URL from the file at the download URL from the file in the storage container. So what we're going to want to do is we're using the storage kind of like Cloudinary, and we're going to get that download URL. And then with that download URL, we are going to console.logit. And again, this is pretty annoying that I can't drag and drop images to test this out. But when you do it, you should see that you'll get a download URL. Hopefully, you'll get a download URL to this file from your Firebase storage. And then you can use that download URL here. You could use that download URL. You could move add to gallery down here. And instead of file URL, say download URL. And then it should display your images in your gallery just as before, but with this extra added trip to Firebase storage. But what we actually want to do is we want to here, instead of displaying it in the gallery here, what I want to do is I want to add this URL to Firestore. And then every time we update our Firestore gallery, our Firestore we'll display this to the gallery. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video.